You know, we often talk about history, but what about a method, a system, designed to protect sacred truth itself? Today, we're diving into something pretty incredible. It's like a fortress of knowledge, built one link at a time, and it's called the Isnad.
This quote right here, from the great early scholar Muhammad bin Sirin, wow, it really sets the stage for everything we're going to talk about. He's saying, hey, this knowledge is the very foundation of your faith, so you better be careful who you're learning it from. It's not just about books and lectures. It's an act of spiritual caution. The message couldn't be clearer. Your source is everything.
So you got to put yourself in their shoes. The early Muslim community had this immense challenge, this huge responsibility. They were the keepers of the Prophet's legacy, his words, his actions, everything. And this wasn't just a bunch of quotes to memorize. It was a living, breathing guide meant to last forever.
So how would you do it? Seriously, think about it. How do you protect something so priceless across centuries? How do you make sure it stays pure, that it doesn't get twisted by faulty memories or even people with bad intentions? That was the big, critical question they were wrestling with.
Because for them, this wasn't just information. It was a treasure, a light. It was way too precious to just leave out in the open. It needed that fortress we talked about, a really careful, detailed system to protect it from any kind of corruption.
And, sometimes it takes a crisis for things to really change. The need for that fortress became crystal clear and fast during a really difficult period of internal conflict. It's known as the Fitna, the Great Tribulation. This crisis basically forced the scholars' hands. They had to come up with a whole new systematic way of verifying information.
And you can actually see this shift happen. Muhammad bin Sirin lays it out for us. At first, in the very early days, it was a high-trust environment. You didn't really have to ask where someone heard something. But then, the fitna happened. Everything changed. The new standard became, okay, hold on, tell us about your men. Basically, show me your receipts, prove your source.
And this is so important to get. This wasn't just scholars being picky for no reason. It was a survival mechanism. It was a tool to preserve the real deal, the authentic sunnah. The Prophet's teaching is an example. They had to separate that from anything that might corrupt it, whether on purpose or by accident.
Okay, so this is where it gets really brilliant. This is the solution they came up with. These are the walls of that fortress we've been talking about. Let's dive into the Isnad itself. So, what exactly is the Isnad? Think of it like a chain of custody for information. It's the list of names, the chain of narrators, that connects the person writing down a saying all the way back, person by person, to the companion who was right there, hearing it from the Prophet himself. It's this direct, unbroken link. The ultimate proof that what you're hearing is legit. And check out how Abdullah bin al-Mubarak put it. He said the Isnad is part of the religion. That's huge! He's saying that without it, it's a free-for-all. Anybody could just make something up and say the Prophet said it. The Isnad is the firewall. It's the system that stops that from happening.
But you know that old saying, right? A chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Well, they knew that. So just having a chain of names wasn't good enough. They had to build a whole science around testing every single person in that chain. These people, the narrators, were the guardians of the tradition, and they had to be rock solid.
And their process was incredibly systematic. First, you had to state your full chain, the Isnad. Lay all your cards on the table. Then, step 2, every single person on that list went under a microscope. Was their character solid? Were they reliable? And finally, step 3, they had to verify the connection. Did person B actually live at the same time and in the same place as person A? Could they have really met? No stone was left unturned.
This quote just shows you how high the bar was. The scholar Thawis would ask about a narrator, is he Malian? That's such a great word. It means like totally solid, capable, reliable, the real deal. Because knowledge was a trust, and you could only take it from someone who had proven they were worthy of that trust.
So what happened was, scholars drew a really clear line in the sand. On one side, you have the people of the Sunnah. These are the good guys, right? Truthful, reliable, the guardians. People sought them out. On the other side, you had the people of innovation. They were seen as unreliable, maybe even sources of corruption. And their narrations, yeah, those were systematically avoided.
And when you step back and look at the result of all this incredibly detailed work, it's just extraordinary. What they built was a fortress of knowledge that has literally stood the test of time, preserving this incredible, unbroken legacy.
I mean, we're talking about over 1,400 years. Just let that sink in for a second.
14 centuries. This system was built to pass down information with almost perfect accuracy across a millennium, and then some. That is just a staggering achievement.
So what's the bottom line here? It's that because of these incredibly tough standards, checking every narrator, verifying every link in the chain, always demanding proof, the fortress worked. It held strong. The scholars managed to protect that treasure inside, keeping the prophet's teachings pure for all the generations that came after.
And that brings us right back to today, doesn't it? It leaves us with a pretty big question. In our world, a world flooded with misinformation, fake news, alternative facts, what can we learn from a system that's over 1,400 years old, but was designed specifically to verify sources and protect the truth? What does this ancient fortress of truth have to teach us right here, right now?